level and a high level. Now, I got that this afternoon from my doppelganger. So I get a lot of stuff from doppelgangers. I use it all the time. I can use it while I'm walking down the street, but of course I've been doing it for 30 years or more.
Just for people who are new to you, could you share a little bit about your background? Now, you have been in this business for years, and by business, what I mean is the whole world of spirituality. You've been meeting with masters all around the world, soaking up their knowledge, and then adapting this knowledge for an American audience. That's why they call you the American monk. But before we go more into quantum jumping, can you very briefly share with us some of your history, particularly your connection with luminaries like Jose Silva and Paramahansa Yogananda?
Well, my first touches when I was in the Army during the Second World War. I go back a long time, as you can imagine, and I was in Korea at the time. And this is before anyone ever heard of Korea, long before the Korean War. And my buddy, also an American, but of Korean background, he spoke Korean. So we used to go around to all of the houses of people he knew, and I thought it was very interesting to meet these people and have a translator. We were in one house, and they had an organ in the house. And I kind of fiddle around. I don't know how to play the piano, but I knew one tune. I knew Old Lang Syne. So while he's talking to the people, I sit down at the organ and I play Old Lang Syne. Da, 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 you know, that song. And they stand up, the people stand up. Now what I didn't know, now talk about coincidences, how about this? I only knew one song. At the time, the melody of Old Lang Syne was the Korean national anthem. And I didn't know it. Well, the people, naturally, they throw their arms around me, and all of a sudden we're buddies. What I didn't know was the man was a mystic. And that was the first time that I heard about Buddhism, the first time I heard about yoga. I didn't know how to meditate. I didn't know any of these things. And he showed me some things that I still use to this day. He showed me how to heal. Now, I used to go back to the house again and again. At any rate, when I left there, my next station was in Hawaii. And there I met some more mystics, kahunas there, that kind of took me along the pathway again. Finally, when I got mustered out of the Army in 1949, I had heard about Paramahansa Yogananda. I'd read his book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. And I met him. As a matter of fact, he baptized me. And I was totally fascinated. I felt that I was in the presence of a giant. And I used to go to the ashram constantly, and I became a monk, an initiate monk. I can't say I was full-fledged because I didn't dedicate my entire being to the ashram and to the yoga philosophies, let us say. But I did learn it. I thought, gee, you know, everyone should know this stuff. Everyone should know this material. And that stayed with me. After that, I began to investigate Buddhism, hypnotism, anything that came along. I hypnotized my first person in 1950. I became a hypnotherapist. Whenever something came along, I investigated it and I tried it out on myself, and everything seemed to work. Well, I went from one thing to another. I heard about Jose Silva, and I met him, and I started bringing so much material into the Silva method that we kind of changed it. I changed it myself from a 4-day course to a 2-day course. I brought in something called Supermind into the course. Jose allowed me to bring in a hypnosis course that I called Hypnovision. He sent his son to Amsterdam at one time, his son Tony, to be instructed by me when I was doing a class in an old monastery, actually, in a place called Barn in the Netherlands. At any rate, one thing led to another. If something came along, I absorbed it. NLP, Feng Shui, labyrinths, one thing after another. And I put my own stamp on it because I realized that all of these things work. Why? Why is there no contradiction? Why? How? Well, the answer finally came to me when I discovered quantum jumping. When I started using quantum jumping, I understood everything, including God. Now, this is another thing. Does quantum jumping disprove God? No. As a matter of fact, quantum jumping proves there is a God. I won't get into the spirituality of quantum jumping because that will take us down a totally different path. But I'm called the American monk for a good reason. And I want to train people. I want to teach people all over the world this particular technique because it will better your life. It will better the world. There's nothing you can't do once you understand the concept of quantum jumping.
That's an amazing promise, Bert. And it's definitely something that I look forward to learning. I mean, I can imagine the power that one would be able to have if they were able to tap into alternate realities and absorb information. And you know what's funny? Even though what you say may be incredulous for some people, if you look back at some of the greatest inventors in history, say Thomas Edison, for example, he had some 2,000 patents to his name. And Thomas Edison had a famous quote. The quote was, "Ideas come from space." It's hard to believe, but it's true. Ideas come from out of space. And listening to you, I recall Thomas Edison and his practice of taking frequent afternoon naps. Now, of course, back then they'd call it afternoon naps. But in reality, perhaps what he was doing was going into a level of meditation, in the light alpha theta levels of meditation, and at this level, absorbing information that he would then use to create new inventions. And of course, he wasn't the only one. There was Elias Howe, the person who invented the sewing machine. He claimed that the idea for the sewing machine came to him in a dream. So I can definitely see that a lot of people, a lot of scientists and in fact musicians as well talk about this. Ideas mysteriously popping into them into dreams. What it seems that you have done is developed a system, you call it quantum jumping, and a system that teaches people how to consciously do this at will. And your explanation seems to be that it's stemming from the idea of multiple universes, which is something that scientists actually talk about these days. And to me, that seems a lot more credible than, say, stuff on the law of attraction and vibrations and all that other stuff, which is more philosophical but not really connecting to science. Does that make sense, Bert?
Absolutely. The scientists, they prove on a quantum. Quantum comes from the word quanta. Quanta is minuscule. Quanta are below the atoms in size. The electrons, the neurons, the quarks, these are quanta. We see the effects of it. Through the understanding or the working with quanta, the scientific community has determined that there are, in fact, multiple realities, multiple dimensions. Now, Edison did it. Yes, I'm sure he did. Elias Howe, absolutely. Galileo, yes, most of the great scientists got their information intuitively, but what they did, they tapped into that for just a second. But because they didn't understand what they were doing, they let it go with that, or they thought it was something else. Well, it wasn't something else. It was actually jumping into a parallel. That's what I want to teach everyone, how to do that. And I believe I'm first, because to my knowledge, no one else has ever done anything like this before. The scientists talk about it, that it's possible, but they don't show you, tell you, demonstrate to you how. That's what I do.
So, Bert, I'm wondering if you can tell me, how did this all begin? How did you discover quantum jumping?
We have to go back to the time when I was 2 years old, believe it or not. When I don't remember much about 2 or 3 or 4, very few people do, but one thing I do remember. When I was 2 years old, 2.5 years, I couldn't even talk at the time. I had a family, you might say, in my mind. Now, I thought this was normal. I thought everybody had them. There were 8 or 10 what I called beautiful women at the time who helped me in my life. they would teach me things. Now, to the level of my understanding at the time, they were always with me. Now, my father moved around a lot, and I just to give you an idea, I'd been to 13 schools as a youngster. And I always had this family with me who were helping me. Now, I didn't realize at the time, but years later, it came to me that these were all helpers set from another dimension by my doppelgangers. They were women, though. They weren't men. But the reason for that was when I was 2 years old, all I knew were women. My father was never around. I didn't have any uncles. My cousins were all female. My aunts were all female, of course. My mother was a woman, naturally. So all I knew was women. And so it was natural that my helpers were women. But that helped me enormously. And many strange things happened when I was a child that remain with me to this day. And well, just to give you an example, as you mentioned, I'm 81 years old. I don't remember being ill, being sick. I'm in perfect health. I eat whatever I want, although I eat in moderation. I don't smoke. I don't drink. So I live a modest life. There's never been any want or need in my life. I've always had exactly what I wanted. And to this day, as you know, I started an entirely new business when I was 81 years old. No, I was 80. I was 80 when I started that business. Mm-hmm. And it turned into an extremely successful business.
That's amazing.
I learned how to paint. I learned art when I was 78 years old. I didn't know anything about art. Now, people want to buy my stuff. As a matter of fact, some of my stuff is at the museum. One of my pictures is in a museum in Switzerland.
Really? And this is a painting or a photograph?
No, there's a paint. Well, both.
I see.
One of my photographs is in, well, I don't want to mention her name, but a baroness's house in Geneva. She has one of my photographs hanging in her home.
Right. That's amazing. But just to go back a moment, you talked about these female guides that you would communicate when you were a kid. Just in case some people are confused, these are not physical beings you're talking about, but entities that came to you in a dream state. Would that be correct?
I call it a controlled daydream. But at 2 years old, I didn't know for me, a dream and reality
Right.
were the same. I didn't know the difference. But it was a controlled, it was like a daydream. A daydream that can be controlled is different than a daydream. When you control a daydream, you literally have a resource that can help you immensely in life.
I see.
Psychics use controlled daydreams. Some of them realize it, some of them don't.
Okay, well, Bert, at this point, what I want to do is can you give us, now I know it's impossible to go into complete detail, but can you give us a glimpse of what how quantum jumping works? How would someone quantum jump?
Well, I can tell you the technique, but it would be like telling someone if you play a Rachmaninoff concerto, it will relieve you of a headache, which it may well do, but if you don't have the means to do that,
right.
It's not going to do you much good. But I can tell you exactly how I do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I can't tell you how I do it because I can do it walking down the street. When I teach people, first thing I teach them is how to go to alpha. Alpha is just a state of mind where you are releasing all the normal minutia that comes into your mind, and you're totally concentrated on one subject. In this particular case, I'm speaking metaphorically now. You daydream a door in front of you. It's a transit door, meaning that it's going to be like the old Star Trek, beam me up. You're beaming out to another universe. And you do it by stepping through the transit door. Now, your intention is what makes this work. Intention is everything. What do you intend to do? Well, I intend to go through that door and visit with a doppelganger, with a twin self in another dimension, who is a great artist, who will teach me how to paint, as an example. And then you daydream, again, metaphorically speaking, the door opens, and you step out into another dimension, and suddenly you're talking to your doppelganger, your twin self, who is a great painter. He's already a painter. He's had the same upbringing as you, but he's for whatever reason, he's a painter. He's not going to teach you how to use a brushstroke. What you're going to get from your twin self is the energy of an artist. People have a different energy. I speak to octaves here. Everything is an energy, a wavelength, so to speak. An artist has a different wavelength, a different energy, different vibration, if you will, than, let's say, a sculptor or a painter. They're using different senses. Now, when you can take that energy of the painter, you suddenly have the ability. That's what happened to me. Now, I still can't paint as, let's say, I can't paint a portrait. I don't know how to do that. But when I started painting, what I did, I got the energy of my painter self, and I started painting. Now, the first painting that I did, well, it was almost startling to me. It wasn't very good, but now I had that energy. I kept painting. I had so much energy to paint that in a 9-month period, I painted 110 canvases. And by the time I got to the 100th canvas.
How old were you when this happened?
I took up painting for the very first time when I was 78.
Amazing. And when did you become an accomplished photographer?
The photography was in 1988.
So that would be 71.
In 1988, that was 20 years ago.
20 years ago,
got it. I was in my 60s.
61. Wow. Okay. And most recently, at the age of 80, you started a new business, your online business, which has now gone on to become a multi-million-dollar business.
Yes. In my 80th year, I started a brand new online business, and the very first year, we grossed close to $1 million.
That's amazing. And so tell me, Bert, you're 81 years old right now. When again do you plan on retiring?
Well, I plan on retiring when I'm 105, but maybe when I'm 104, I'll change my mind.
Right. Right. No, that is amazing. You're an amazing man. I mean, in terms of what you've been able to accomplish so late in life when so many people just give up. So I really respect you for that, and I hope I have that energy when I'm your age.
Well, you will. You will. Of all the people that I would bet on, you're one of them.
So now, Bert, I do want to ask you this question: why did you wait so long to share the concept of quantum jumping with the world?
Well, mainly because it was such a weird concept, and all of a sudden I discovered that some of the most eminent scientists in the world actually believe in it. I was doing a seminar for the Edgar Cayce group of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Edgar Cayce, not Edgar Cayce.
Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, right?
Cut that out. I was doing a lecture for Edgar Mitchell's group, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Edgar Mitchell was the sixth man on the moon and an eminent physicist. And that's about the time that I discovered that people like him actually accepted the fact that there were what I've been thinking and doing myself for all these years. They accepted the fact that there were such a thing as alternate dimensions and infinite realities. I've been talking about infinity for 30 years, and all of a sudden I realized that scientists accept this. When I discovered that, then I felt, well, it's not a far out concept. People will accept it. If the scientific community accepts it, then they'll accept my version of it. That's when I decided to give it to the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. Before you go off the phone, I was just wondering, are there any other fascinating stories that you can share about quantum jumping? Because I find your stories really, really intriguing.
I've got quite a few. The most inspirational one is Al Mondali. Al worked, well, it doesn't matter. He had a job, a white-collar job, and he was let go. And so he jumped into a parallel to see if he can get some inspiration from his doppelganger, because he was really in a bad way when I met him. Well, he did get some interesting information, and he took the most menial job he could find, a dishwasher. Now, I must say this might have happened because in my classes I used to tell people, you know, one of my ambitions was to go into a strange town with $5 in my pocket, with the goal of in 1 year owning a business. But I was always too busy to do it. Well, Al heard that, and he might have been affected by that because the doppelganger that he went into told him to get a job as a dishwasher. Now, that was really a menial job for him because he was a white-collar worker. This is a real rags to riches story because Al, he wanted to be the best dishwasher that has ever been. Now, this is one of the prime things he got from his doppelganger. Be the best of the best. And it's a real rags to riches story because I could tell the story, but let me just give you the end result of it. If you want to hear the story, I'll tell you the whole story. He wound up not only owning the restaurant, but developing a whole string of them. He wound up with 12 restaurants, owning them, starting as a dishwasher through a quantum jump.
Wow. What is that restaurant called?
Dozens.
Amazing. That's very remarkable. And what I like about that is that the idea he got was to go into that menial job as a dishwasher, and all the coincidences stemmed from that. Sometimes it would be the option that you least expect.
He went from dishwasher to waiter to cook. He actually marketing to, he just kept stepping up.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. Those were some amazing stories and incredible ideas.